On February 9th, 2004, a 21-year-old nursing student named Maura Murray sat down at her computer and typed an email to her professors. She told them there had been a death in the family, that she needed a week off. There was no death in the family. No one had called her. No one had died. It was a lie, carefully written, quietly sent, and nobody questioned it. That same night, she packed her car with everything she might need for a long trip: clothes, snacks, directions she had printed from MapQuest to a cabin in the mountains. She withdrew $280 in cash from an ATM. She drove north, and somewhere on a dark, winding road deep in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, Maura Murray vanished. No body was ever found. No suspect was ever charged. And more than 20 years later, nobody knows what really happened. Welcome to Echoes. To truly understand what happened to Maura Murray, you have to understand who she was in the months leading up to that night. Because this wasn't a random disappearance. Something was building inside her, something she never fully shared with anyone. Maura grew up in Hanson, Massachusetts, a small, quiet town south of Boston. She was the kind of girl people described as driven, ambitious. She had joined the Army ROTC, earned good grades, and won a spot at the prestigious United States Military Academy at West Point. But West Point didn't last. She left after her first year under circumstances that were never fully explained publicly. Some say it was voluntary, some say there were disciplinary issues. Whatever the reason, she transferred to the University of Massachusetts Amherst, UMass, and enrolled in the nursing program. On the surface, life at UMass looked normal. She had friends. She had a boyfriend named Bill Roush, a West Point graduate stationed at Fort Campbell in Kentucky. They were in a long-distance relationship. She ran track. She studied. But underneath that surface, cracks were beginning to show. In the fall of 2003, Maura was caught using a credit card that didn't belong to her to purchase items at the UMass campus store. The card belonged to a family friend. Charges were filed and then quietly dropped. But the incident left a mark on her record and, perhaps, on her conscience. Then, just days before she disappeared, came another incident. On February 7th, 2004, 2 days before she vanished, Maura borrowed her father Fred's car while he was visiting her for the weekend. She drove alone, and somewhere along the road, she lost control of the vehicle and crashed into a guardrail. The car was damaged. Fred Murray was upset, but according to those who were there that night, what stood out wasn't the crash itself. It was how Maura reacted afterward. She was deeply distressed, shaken in a way that went beyond a fender bender. Father and daughter spent that weekend together, and by all accounts, things seemed okay when Fred left on Sunday. 2 days later, Maura sent that email. And then she was gone. Let's talk about the night itself, because the timeline of February 9th, 2004 is one of the most analyzed and debated timelines in the history of missing persons cases. It begins on the UMass campus, sometime in the afternoon. Maura packed her car, a black 1996 Saturn sedan. She loaded it with clothing, some food, and a collection of items that suggested she wasn't planning a quick trip. She had printed directions. She had a destination in mind. At approximately 3:40 p.m., she called a number for a condo rental company in the Mount Sunapee area of New Hampshire. She left a voicemail. The rental office was closed. She also looked up directions to several locations in New Hampshire, areas known for ski resorts and mountain cabins, remote, quiet, far from everyone she knew. At around 4 p.m., she called her boyfriend, Bill Roush. The call lasted less than a minute. She left him a voicemail. In it, she said she loved him. He would later say it didn't sound like a typical goodbye, but it didn't sound entirely normal either. At 7 p.m., surveillance cameras captured Maura at a local liquor store near campus. She purchased a bottle of Bailey's Irish Cream, a box of wine, and vodka. The total came to roughly $40. She paid in cash. She then stopped at a gas station and filled up her tank. And then she drove north on Interstate 93 toward New Hampshire. alone. Route 112 in New Hampshire is not the kind of road you drive by accident. It's a narrow, winding two-lane highway that cuts through the White Mountain National Forest. In February, it's dark, icy, and remote. There are no street lights, no gas stations for miles, just trees, snow, and silence. At approximately 7:27 p.m., a woman named Barbara Fenneman was driving along Route 112 when she noticed a black Saturn had gone off the road. The car had hit a snowbank and appeared to be stuck. She stopped and asked if everything was okay. Maura told her she was fine, that she had already called for help. Barbara drove to a nearby house and called 911 herself, just to be sure. Then, at approximately 7:46 p.m., just minutes after Barbara's call, a local school bus driver named Butch Atwood was finishing his route when he passed the same crash site. He stopped. He saw Maura standing outside her car. Butch Atwood was a kind man. He offered to let her wait inside his bus while help arrived. It was freezing outside. She was alone on a dark road in the middle of nowhere. Maura declined. She told him she had already called AAA. That help was on the way. Butch drove home, which was just down the road, and called 911 himself. The first officer arrived at 7:46 p.m. Maura's car was still there. The engine was still warm. A recycling bag had been used, possibly to clean up spilled alcohol from the crash. Her purse was gone. Her cell phone was gone. Her keys were gone. But Maura was gone. There were no footprints leading clearly away from the vehicle. No signs of a struggle. No witnesses who saw her walk away. She had simply vanished. In the time between Butch Atwood driving away and the police arriving, a window of perhaps 10 minutes, something had happened. What that something was, nobody knows. The search began immediately. Law enforcement flooded the area. Search and rescue teams combed the woods on both sides of Route 112. Cadaver dogs were brought in. The nearby Beaver Brook was searched. The Connecticut River, several miles away, was searched by divers. Nothing. Helicopters scanned the mountain terrain. Volunteers walked grid by grid through miles of dense forest. The search went on for days. Nothing, no body, no clothing, no personal belongings, no trace. It was as if the mountain had swallowed her whole. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the investigation took on a life of its own. Tips came in from across the country. Witnesses came forward, and with each new piece of information came more questions than answers. One witness reported seeing a man standing near Maura's car in the darkness, watching, before the police arrived. He was never identified. Another witness reported a silver Jeep Cherokee driving slowly through the area that night, shortly after the crash. The vehicle was never traced. A local man reported seeing a woman matching Maura's description walking along the road, heading east, away from her car, away from the direction of the crash. He didn't stop. By the time investigators followed up, no further trace could be found. Each lead dissolved into nothing. Fred Murray refused to accept that his daughter was gone. In the months and years that followed, Fred drove those same mountain roads himself, dozens, then hundreds of times. He put up flyers. He knocked on doors. He held press conferences. He begged for information. He was relentless in the way only a father who loves his child can be, and Fred Murray had his own theories. He believed someone had picked Maura up that night, that she had gotten into a vehicle, willingly or not, and been taken somewhere. He pointed to the narrow window between Butch Atwood leaving and the police arriving. 10 minutes, enough time for a car to stop, enough time for something to happen. Fred Murray also believed, and said publicly, that local law enforcement had mishandled the early hours of the investigation. That critical evidence had been overlooked, that the scene hadn't been properly preserved. Whether he was right or wrong, his passion for his daughter's case kept it alive in the public consciousness for 2 decades. Fred Murray passed away in June of 2020. He never got his answers. Over the years, investigators and amateur researchers have developed several major theories about what happened to Maura Murray. The first theory is that Maura intended to disappear. In this scenario, the crash was either an accident or staged, but either way, Maura used it as her opportunity to walk away from her life. She had cash, she had packed a bag, she had a destination in mind. Those who believe this theory point to the email she sent, the packed car, the cash withdrawal, and the rental inquiry as evidence of planning. They suggest she may have been overwhelmed by the credit card incident, the recent car crash, troubles in her relationship, or pressures she never shared with anyone. But this theory has problems. If Maura wanted to disappear, why hasn't she ever surfaced? In 20 years, with facial recognition technology, social media, and an enormous online community searching for her, not a single credible sighting has ever emerged. People who disappear voluntarily almost always surface eventually. The second theory is that she got into a vehicle willingly and something went wrong. Perhaps she accepted a ride from a stranger, and that stranger was dangerous. Perhaps she trusted someone she shouldn't have. In this scenario, Maura is a victim of chance, a wrong decision on a dark road that cost her everything. The third theory is that she wandered into the wilderness and died of exposure. New Hampshire winters are brutal. The temperature that night was well below freezing. If Maura had been drinking, which the alcohol purchases suggest, she may have been impaired. She may have walked into the woods, become disoriented, and succumbed to hypothermia. But this theory struggles against one fact. Search teams with cadaver dogs covered the area extensively and found nothing. No remains, no clothing, nothing. The fourth theory, and the darkest one, is that someone was waiting. That the crash was witnessed by the wrong person. That someone with harmful intentions saw an opportunity on a dark, empty road and took it. This theory would explain the total absence of any trace. It would explain why no voluntary disappearance ever surfaced, and it would explain that mysterious figure, the man reportedly standing near the car in the darkness, watching. None of these theories have ever been proven. All of them remain open. The Maura Murray case has become one of the most investigated cold cases in internet history. Online communities with thousands of members have spent years analyzing every detail. The MapQuest directions, the liquor store receipt, the phone calls, the mysterious vehicles, the timeline, down to the minute. Books have been written. Podcasts have dedicated entire seasons to the case. Documentaries have been made. Journalists have spent years on it. And still, nothing conclusive. There is something about this case that refuses to let people go. Maybe it's the ordinariness of it, a young woman, a quiet road, a 10-minute window. Maybe it's the feeling that the answer is somewhere buried in those mountains, hidden in plain sight, and that one day someone will finally find it. Or maybe it's something darker, the uncomfortable truth that sometimes people vanish and the world keeps turning and the answers never come. Maura Murray would be 42 years old today. Somewhere, there may be someone who knows exactly what happened on Route 112 on the night of February 9th, 2004. Someone who has carried that knowledge for over 20 years. If you have any information about Maura Murray, please contact the New Hampshire Cold Case Unit or the National Center for Missing and Exploited Persons. Her family deserves answers. She deserves answers. This is Echoes. Every case we cover is real. Every victim was a person with a life, a family, and a story that deserves to be told. If this story moved you, subscribe, leave a comment, share it with someone, because the more people who know these stories, the harder it becomes for the truth to stay buried. I'll see you on the next case. The silence is always louder than you think.